Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about basics of stock trout fishing. By the end of this video, you'll be able to go to your local lake or pond or stream and be able to catch a bunch of stock trout using these rigs and tips that I'm about to show you. Everything will fit in this one box and it's all easily accessible at even a local Walmart or anything like that. So make sure you stay tuned to the end of the video and I'll give you all my basics of stock trout fishing. If you're new to my channel, go ahead down below and hit the subscribe button for me. I'm trying to reach at least 1,000 subscribers, so if you could help me out with that, that would be greatly appreciated, and you won't miss any more of my fishing tips or videos. So now, let's get into what's in this box so you can start catching some stock trout on your local bodies of water. Trout fishing is an awesome way to get someone into fishing, or if you're just getting started yourself, it's a very easy way to go out and catch a lot of fish and have a lot of fun. To start, you're going to need a rod. So to get out there and fish, you don't need fancy equipment for fishing for trout. This is just a 5'6" ultralight rod. I built this one myself, but you can find plenty out there from anywhere from about like $15, $20 up to about $100 depending on how much you want to spend. The nicer rod you get, like a St. Croix or something like that, is going to be a nicer blank and more sensitive, but you really don't need something that's too fancy for trout. They're very easy to catch, so even a $20, I think Berkley makes a rod, it's $20, I think it's the cherry wood rod, comes in an ultralight, and it's perfect for trout fishing. And then I have it paired up with a Shimano Sedona 500 size reel here. I like a very small setup like this, especially because a lot of the lures you're going to be throwing are very light. They're not going to weigh a whole lot, so you need a rod that can handle light lures. And then I just like having a small rod because a lot of times I'm fishing small creeks or streams where a long rod would just be too cumbersome to deal with while you're out there fishing. So that's going to be the basic rod setup. You can find a combo at a Walmart or anything like that. Just make sure it's under 6 foot long and it's an ultralight action with a small reel, and it'll do everything you need it to do to go out there and catch some trout. Now let's talk about what type of line you're going to need to have. Line is actually very important when fishing for trout. A lot of these fish live in small creeks with clear water and they get very pressured. You'll notice in some of those shots I just took that I have braid spooled up on my reel. I wouldn't recommend that as a beginner if you're just getting into trout fishing, because you'd have to tie leaders on for your braid and everything like that to have clear line, because fish can see braid. So if you're just getting into trout fishing, this would be the line I would recommend. It is P-line floor clear in the 4-pound test. I would recommend to use 4-pound test because, like I said, a lot of these creeks are small and clear, so you'll actually outfish people using 6-pound test, which is another popular line size, just by switching to this 4-pound test. And this stuff's very affordable. It's $10 for a 300-yard spool, which will last you a very long time. And it's invisible to the fish underwater because it has that fluorocarbon coating, so it'll make sure you get more bites. So there's 4 main rigs that I like to fish for trout. We'll go through them one by one. That's going to be everything that was in that box that I showed you at the beginning of this video. So the first rig is actually going to be a float rig. I'm going to use these little floats right here. These are from Leland Lures. They're the trout magnet floats. They have a little slit along the side here, so that when you put your line in, you can put it along the slit here, take the peg, and peg it in the top. When you peg it up like that, you can adjust your depth however you need. And then below that float, we're going to get a very small jig head, just like this. It's a 1/64 or a 1/32 ounce jig head, a gold jig head with a size 8 or 10 hook on it. Underneath that float, I'm going to put either a Berkley Powerbait Power Worm, or I have some Berkley Powerbait Minnows as well. This is another popular one I like to use. And then the last one would actually be the trout magnet itself. They make these little grub bodies. They're smaller than the power worm, so sometimes if the fishing's tough, the trout magnet will work better than the power worm, but I prefer to use the power worm first just because it has some scent, so it'll get you a couple extra bites while you're out there on the creek. So rigging up this float rig is actually a very simple process. All you're going to do is tie this jig head on at the end of your line and then put your favorite plastic on it, whether you choose the trout magnet or the power worms or the power minnows. Just pick your favorite color for the trout worms and the trout magnets. The pink, the chartreuse, and even like white or yellow works really well, but you can pick your favorite color. I'm sure they'll work. And then for the Powerbait Minnows, there's a color called Emerald Shiner. It is by far the best color. If you're going to use those Powerbait Minnows, that's the only color I use when I'm fishing them. And then once you have your jig head tied on and your plastic on, you'll take this bobber and put it however far away from the jig head that you need it on your line. When you put it on, you can adjust it to the depth of the water, so if the fish are deeper, you can slide it up, and then if they're shallower, you can slide it back down. And then as you're walking through the creek, you can adjust the depth of water that you're fishing in based on the hole that you're fishing in as well. These jig heads also come in different colors. I'll link some down below if I can find any where I buy mine. I buy them in 25 packs, so you can, they're cheaper than buying the trout magnet ones. But if you can find them, they're in a variety of colors. You can get them colored in like chartreuse or gold or silver. The most popular ones are gold and silver. But if you like a colored jig head, you can do that as well, and it'll add a different little color to the front of your plastic. And that is the basic setup for a float rig. All you do is cast it out and let it drift down through the creek, or cast it out in a lake and make sure to jig it every once in a while to give it some action. If you'd like a more detailed rundown on how to fish some of these rigs, make sure you hit the subscribe button. I have a video coming out for almost all of these rigs on how to fish them in the coming weeks. So if you want to see a very detailed breakdown of how to rig them and how to fish them, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss those. Let's talk about the second type of fishing that I like to do for trout, which is actually live bait fishing. I don't do it often because they tend to swallow the bait and then you end up killing trout, but if you're keeping them, it's a great way to do it. They love live bait. And a lot of the creeks that I fish here are delayed harvest, and you can only use artificial lures anyway. So make sure you're following your state's regulations on if you can use live bait for trout or not. If you can, they love redworms, they love waxworms, and they love live minnows as well, very small ones. This is a very simple rig to make up, just like the jig head rig, but instead of using a jig head below the bobber, you're going to put your bobber on the same way you did, the same Leland Lures trout magnet float, and then you're going to use split shot below that, and then a hook at the very end. So this rig is going to go with your float up top, and then you'll come down and you'll tie on your hook. When you tie on your hook to the end of the line, you want to go up about 12 inches in between the float and the hook, and you'll pinch a split shot onto your line right there. So it'll keep your bait down in the water, and your float will sit up top and let you know if you get a bite. You can drift it through the creek or leave it out in the lake and wait for a trout to come along and get the live bait. They love live bait, so it works really well. A couple tips for this rig on what you need to buy to make sure that you're very effective with this rig. Eagle Claw makes bait holder hooks. Get a size 10 Eagle Claw bait holder hook. Don't get the snelled versions because you put 4-pound test on your line. The snelled versions are going to come with thicker leader that they pre-tie them with, so you'll actually get less bites if you use those. So make sure you get the loose hooks and tie them onto your 4-pound test that you spooled up your rod with. These split shots, I buy them in this little bag like this. You only need 2 sizes. I tend to get them in the bags instead. They make them in like a little selector that you can pick. They have like 4 different sizes or 6 different sizes, but they're like $6 for one of those. And it's just unnecessary because you're not going to use some of those sizes that are in that selector. So I just get the 2 sizes I use most and make sure that I just fish with those, and then you get more this way, so it's a little bit cheaper. There's only 2 sizes you need. The first one is going to be a 3/0 size right there, and then the second one is actually going to be a size BB. The 3/0 is a little bit bigger, and I use that whenever the current's a little bit stronger. I need to get my bait down a little bit further. But if you can use the size BB, use that, because the lighter weight that you can use, the more bites you're going to get. So those are the 2 size split shots you need, the size 10 bait holder hooks, and then that same Leland Lures trout float. The third way I like to fish for trout is actually my favorite way, and that is with fishing with lures. So this is a rooster tail right here, and the other option that I like to use a lot is a Castmaster spoon, just like that. I buy 1/8 ounce size Castmasters and rooster tails. They come in a variety of colors. I have some that are very flashy like this, like a chartreuse with a gold. You can get gold spoons, silver spoons, but if you were just getting ready, you just wanted to buy the bare basics to go out and trout fish, you need an 1/8 ounce rooster tail in black and white with a silver blade, and then you need 2 spoons. Make sure one is gold and one is silver. You want to use the gold on cloudier days, and you want to use the silver on sunnier days, because that's going to produce the most flash and it's going to get you the most bites. You can pick whatever color you like and they'll all work, I promise you. Anything shiny, they'll find it, they'll follow it, and they hit it really hard, so it's a ton of fun to fish with them this way. And it's super simple to fish. All you're going to do is tie your rooster tail onto the end of your line. You don't want to use any split shot or anything like that. It'll kill the action of your bait and it'll catch you less bites. So just tie the bait straight to your line. An 1/8 ounce rooster tail will get down in the water column far enough, and if you need it to go farther, you can cast it out and let it sink. Count to 3, 4, however many seconds you want. It'll sink about 1 foot a second. and let it sink down to wherever the depth of the water, wherever the depth of the fish are, and just a slow, steady retrieve back, and they'll hit it really hard, and they almost always get hooked because they have that treble hook on the back there. So you land the majority of the fish that actually end up biting this. This is easily my most fun way and my favorite way to fish for the trout. So make sure you get yourself some rooster tails and Castmaster spoons as well for the third rig to fish for trout. Now the last technique that I like to use for trout, I use this one very, very rarely because it almost always will kill the fish when you catch it, is power bait. You can use this if you're keeping fish and if you're fishing in a place that allows the use of it. It works magically. I mean, you will catch a ton of trout using this, but like I said, they will swallow it every time, and you'll either have to cut the hook off and leave it in them, or you'll have to rip the hook out and it'll end up killing the fish. But it does work well, so if you're allowed to use it and you are keeping fish, definitely give this a try. But this is my last one on the list that I use the least out of the three, because I can catch fish, way more fish with the other three techniques, especially the two lure techniques, the jig and the bobber and the rooster tail, than I can with this, and it doesn't kill the fish when you use it. But this rig, very basic. The only addition that you're going to need for the rest of the stuff that we already got for the other rigs is some jars of power bait. It comes in a variety of colors. The chartreuse glitter is a very popular option. They make pinks, they make peach colors, they make garlic scented ones. Any of them will work. They work very well. Pick your favorite color or your favorite scent and you'll end up using it, and I promise they'll bite it. And the other thing you'll need is an 1/8 ounce egg sinker right here. You'll slide this on your line to make this rig. You're going to make a almost makeshift Carolina rig that a lot of guys use for bass fishing. You're going to slide this egg sinker up onto your line so that it's free sliding, and then you're going to take one of those split shots that you used on the float rig earlier for live bait, and you're going to put this at the depth that you want your power bait to float. So you'll tie your size 10 bait holder hook on, you'll slide this on your line first, and then this will be free flowing up and down to the bait holder hook. What you want to do is, if you want your power bait to float 2 feet off the bottom because it floats, you'll slide this egg sinker up 2 feet and you'll put a split shot below it facing towards the hook, and it'll stop that sinker to go all the way down to the hook right where that split shot is. So you'll be able to get a long cast with this sinker out into the lake or wherever, and then you'll leave it sit on the bottom. But when a trout comes and bites it, and it's floating up off the bottom so they can see it, when a trout comes and bites it and swims away, this sinker will not, they won't have to pull the sinker. They'll just pull free line with the split shot because you've had it stopped, and the sinker will continue to lay on the bottom, and they won't know that the line is attached, so they'll end up eating it every single time. Like I said, that's how they end up swallowing it, but it's a very effective rig. So all you'd have to do is get an 1/8 ounce egg sinker and some power bait, and you'd be able to head out there and catch some fish with that technique, in addition to the other ones we already talked about. I hope this video helped you out in learning about some of the basics of trout fishing. I promise if you go out and use some of these rigs, you'll be catching a bunch of trout in no time. They're very easy to catch, and these rigs will help you do it. I catch a ton of trout every spring using these exact same rigs. Make sure, if you want to see how to fish some of them, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Like I said, I'll be posting a couple videos coming up soon on how to fish these rigs. And if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like down below, and thanks for watching.